Good morning, all. This is the second round of Good Monday morning because Monday's the best day of the week. I was actually over on TikTok. That's where I'm spilling all my tea and the details of my scandalous life. And I was talking about, I'm talking about the role that my mental health played in the way my divorce went down. And I wanted to share some information that's not really for there, but more people here would probably be interested in it. And that is the connection between Freud, war, women, and trauma that people don't tell us about. So most people, their knowledge of Freud is basically that he was a brilliant cocaine addicted psychologist who who made up weird ideas like an Oedipus complex and penis envy and all these bizarre theories about the relationships between children and their opposite and same gendered parents. And, some of it was pulling off of legitimate work like Jung, but some of it we now recognize as that was bad shit. But he played a pivotal role in the development of psychology. But he also had theories that, like I said, very clearly now we're that's crazy people. That's cocaine talking. No, that is not real. Sorry, guys. Women are not running around with penis envy. We might be running around with some power envy because y'all are like that. But no, penis envy is not real. So the relationship here. Okay, so here's what people don't know about Freud. Before Freud was coming up with all these weird things about the impacts of toileting on levels of conscientiousness and weird stuff, he got his start. He was working with women from prominent families who were displaying the symptoms of hysteria. All through the ages, there have been records of women having, mental health symptoms that often kind of change with the era, but everybody seems to have the same kind of symptoms around the same time. And so hysteria was the thing during the time of Freud. And people would bring their daughters, their sisters, whomever, to Freud to figure out, what's going on here? How can we help them? Well, what happened in case after case after case was Freud discovered that these women had been sexually abused at a young age by male relatives. Now, if you recall, I mentioned that these were women who were part of prominent families. So people were not super, super open to the idea that there were men in these prominent, respected families sexually abusing female children inside these prominent families. And this was the reason for their scandalous behavior, not some mental, moral defect. So at some point, there was Freud really figured out what was going on. He figured out, if you go back and look at his work from that day, obviously, it's not fully developed, but he found what the problem was and how it was functioning in people's, sort of psyche. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he even described the CPTSD symptom of an emotional flashback where something triggers you instead of triggering a conscious memory. It triggers the sensation of the emotion or sort of mental emotional state that you were in some previous time, which is very subtle. And often, people don't know that that's what's happening. They think there's something wrong in the world outside of them that's causing that. So anyways, he pretty much figured it out. However, because what he figured out was not acceptable to the powers that be, they told him, obviously, sir, you are wrong. And if you are not wrong, then you might be dead. Um, so he was like, yes, obviously I was wrong. And this, I believe, is why I give him some grace on the cocaine habit, because I would think that discovering that your world is being run by predatory people like this, and that you are now being silenced and have to be complicit in this way, could drive a person to be a lunatic. So anyways, that was the foundations of psychology. And right there we see it's deeply rooted in the trauma being experienced inside the homes of prominent families by their daughters. And obviously that's not the only place this was happening. This was just where Freud was working and uncovering that. So what has happened since then is we have seen that during times of war, that is when we see forward movement in the development of our understanding of PTSD, which, obviously shell shock and all of that, because as the vets coming back, it's common, it's predictable that there are going to be people dealing with it. The government made provisions for that. They would train people in psychology and psychiatry, and during periods, after the First World War, and particularly after the Second World War, in which the government made very significant investments into psychiatry and psychology, in an attempt to meet the mental health needs of men coming back with PTSD. So during those times, you see leaps forward in our understanding of trauma, which tends to have a knock-on effect of also allowing our understanding of the complex trauma that is, most prominent among women, among LGBTQ people, among minority people. You start to see advancements in our understanding of that kind of trauma that piggybacks off of those investments into understanding the trauma of war. In the last 25 years, the United States has, of course, we've always been involved with wars, but we have been really consistently involved in wars for an extended period of time, which means we have been creating an entire new generation of vets with PTSD for over 2 decades now. And we have seen very rapid advances in our understanding of trauma. We have started to see more openness in our willingness to look at other avenues for treating trauma besides psychotherapy, which is not actually very effective. It's, one of the reasons why weed is legal in many places. I'm actually going to be talking on my TikTok about my own relationship with weed as a person with complex trauma and the role that ended up playing in my divorce. It's predictable, just, forewarn you. So, yeah, but it has, I now live in a state where it's legal, and that is in no small part due to the fact that weed is very helpful for people with trauma. And as vets have, as people have become more open to it because they know vets who have benefited from it, it's become more generally acceptable. And then that has the knock-on effect of benefiting people like myself and LGBTQ people and minority people who can now more safely, hopefully, maybe in theory, get some effective relief so that they can recover from the traumas that they've experienced. So anyways, I just thought that was all very interesting, and it's stuff that people generally don't know. And I wanted to share that all with you. So anyhow, I love you all. I will talk with you later.